Okay. And then, Melissa, how does somebody know when they're gambling for fun and when it's crossing over into an unhealthy territory?
Just not enjoying it anymore. You maybe have made a couple bets and you're losing and you're spending more money than you had originally planned, which means you're chasing losses, which you will never win back before it actually gets to a problem, which is where you hear more of the devastating stories of people maybe losing their employment, losing their homes, and those types of things.
How many people are affected by this? Do we have any stats?
We haven't pulled the latest information, but we can say that the prevalence across the province is very high. It's also very high for people who are experiencing gambling problems.
Sports betting websites. Again, I don't know all the avenues they can go around and putting bets, but I've seen a lot of ads for these online sports betting websites that make it seem really easy, right? Flashy with the marketing campaign. So, who has the onus? Whose responsibility is it to watch how much they're gambling?
But we also have to remember that sports betting and online gambling in our province is legal, right? Again, it's entertainment. And so what we ask people to do is just become informed, right? And understand that there are some things that you can do.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Amin Dillon, and today on this episode, I'm chatting with Melissa Tony Williams, who's the Associate Director of Community Engagement and Partnerships at the Responsible Gambling Council. Melissa, thanks so much for being on the show. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Me too. Okay, so let's get right into it. For the folks that are not familiar with what Responsible Gambling Council is, can you briefly talk to us about what you do?
So the Responsible Gambling Council is a not-for-profit organization that's been around for more than 40 years. And our vision is that gambling should not come at a human cost. So we do everything from public education, research. We also do accreditation and regulatory standards. So all of the key pieces related to keeping gambling safe in the province of Ontario. We work with all stakeholders, right from community organizations to operators and to regulators. And we use the evidence to develop content and information to ensure that for those of us who want to gamble, we have all of the information that we need to make informed decisions. And we also provide information for people who might be experiencing gambling harms to get some support.
Okay, and then Melissa, how does somebody know when they're gambling for fun and when it's crossing over into an unhealthy territory?
Well, I think the way you started that question is perfect. Gambling is supposed to be fun and it's entertainment. It is not a way to, supplement your income. It really is just intended to be, maybe a fun evening. You're watching a game and you want to place a couple bets. And so when it starts to feel less fun is an indication that the gambling maybe needs to be reflecting on a little bit, right? So perhaps you are just not enjoying it anymore. You maybe have made a couple bets and you're losing and you're spending more money than you had originally planned, which means you're chasing losses, which you will never win back. That can be an indication. You're thinking about it more often than not. You're starting to hide your gambling behaviors. You're maybe lying to people and not being honest about how much you're gambling. You're starting to miss, personal, social, or family events. These are small indications. And so it's important for us to understand that when we think about gambling or problem gambling, we generally have a thought in our mind of who or the type of person that might fit into that mold. And the reality is anybody can experience gambling harms. Gambling harms are the very subtle indications that gambling might be moving in a direction that you don't want it to before it actually gets to a problem, which is where you hear more of the devastating stories of people maybe losing their employment, losing their homes, and those types of things.
How many people are affected by this? Do we have any stats?
We do have stats. So, evidence across the province of Ontario is shifting. We actually are in the process now of doing a longitudinal study looking at sports betting. We haven't pulled the latest information, but we can say that the prevalence across the province is very high. It's also very high for people who are experiencing gambling problems. But the reason that these conversations is very important is because we also know through evidence that there are some priority populations that have higher rates of experiencing gambling harms as well. And so those would be the South Asian community, the East Asian Chinese community, Indigenous populations, and the Black community across the province of Ontario. And so we work with not-for-profit organizations that are representative of these communities. We take evidence, we partner to come up with ways to make sure that our messaging is reaching those who really need to hear it. And I will also highlight youth and young adults are also on the rise for gambling harms. The highest risk population right now are young men aged 18 to 24 years of age, specifically with sports betting.
Why is that?
Because, under the age of 24, the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. And so the decision making, the maturity around that isn't fully developed as well. You'll find in young adult male populations, risk-taking behaviors also tend to take precedence when it comes to decision making. The other piece is sports is very popular, and it's a way of uniting people. Men definitely use that to kind of bond with each other. And so there is this fallacy that people believe that if they have experience playing a sport, they know all of the games, they know all of the popular players, they study all of the stats, they can tell you who won the Super Bowl like 10 years ago. They have all this knowledge and they think they can make bets and guarantee a win because they have the expertise. And that's not the case. And that's specific to sports bettors.
So is the onus on the individual to be mindful of their gambling and to self-assess if they're no longer healthy? Or should the onus also be on these sports betting websites? Again, I don't know all the avenues they can go around and putting bets, but I've seen a lot of
Yeah.
ads for these online sports betting websites that make it seem really easy, very flashy with the marketing campaign. So
Yeah.
who has the onus? Whose responsibility is it to watch how much they're gambling?
I would say that the onus would be on the individual. Look, gambling is a multi-billion-dollar business. You're absolutely right. There are tons of advertisements everywhere you go. Everything is gamified. But we also have to remember that sports betting and online gambling in our province is legal, right? Again, it's entertainment. And so what we ask people to do is just become informed, right? And understand that there are some things that you can do to ensure that you still have a fun-filled event. But there's also some tools on these platforms that can also help you reach that goal, which is remaining safe, staying in your budget. So we ask people to be present and intentional and really think ahead before they engage in any kind of gambling.
Okay, so then let's talk about how we can prevent this. So you were mentioning a few things already, but let's just say somebody is gambling,
Yeah.
maybe they're not sure if it's an issue right now, or maybe even a family member who's watching this interview is, potentially looking for the signs. What can we do to prevent this?
So there's two things I'll answer. So the first one is what can people do if they gamble to stay safe? And so I spoke about setting a budget, which I think is the most obvious piece. If you're gambling, you are exchanging money in the hopes of getting more money in return. That doesn't always happen. So make sure you're gambling and only spending what you can afford, right? So whether it's $20, $30, think of it the same way as if you were going out on a date or you're going out for dinner, you have a budget, just stick with that. The other thing is time limits. Right. So we all know because we all have our phones in our hands. We can be there scrolling away. It's the same thing if you're betting online on a sports platform. So give yourself a bit of a time limit. Maybe you are on that game for half an hour, maybe an hour. Put the phone down and walk away, get a bit of a breather, focus on something else. Just know that you're managing your time because the longer you play, the more you spend. Right. So something else to think about. This is really key when it comes to major sporting events because most people who watch them will be at sports bars or lounges, or maybe you'll be at friends and families' houses. There's lots of food. I always think of like wings and tailgating at Super Bowl, but there's usually a lot of drinks and things like that as well. And so, it's always best to limit and if you can possibly avoid the use of alcohol or other substances because we know that impairs your judgment. And so, if things are going left with your bets, it might be a little difficult to interrupt that behavior if you're under the influence of alcohol and other substances. The other thing to consider is if you're not in a good mood, if you're feeling a little depressed or down and you want to kind of focus on something to take your mind off of it, another situation where it's probably not the best time for you to be betting either. If you're not in a good space, gambling is a financial decision. So you might want to step away from that until you're feeling a little bit more like yourself and you can be a little bit more clear-headed when you're engaged with that. And
Mhm.
lastly, I think what I would say is all online betting takes place through sports books and platforms online. So those would be the operator messaging that you would see on the TV and things like that. And all of these platforms have tools. So they have tools in them that will help you set a budget limit so that you're not able to bet any more than you already had anticipated. These tools will also set time limits and time you out of your session if you go over that time limit. The other thing that's really good is that they will also capture how much money you have spent, how much you have lost, and how much time you have spent. So we ask people to take some time to get familiar with the platforms that they use, just so that you can monitor your behavior over time. The last part of your question you asked was, how can I assess or know what type of gambler I am? If you were to visit our website, which is responsiblegambling.org, we actually do have an online assessment that people can take in the privacy of their own homes. And you can, answer the questions and it will give you a sense of your gambling behaviors and what type of gambler you are. And it'll also give you some really good tips on what you might want to reconsider and how you can maybe shift your approach to make sure that you don't move towards experiencing gambling harms. And then again, our website has lots of information, not only for the person that gambles, but for friends, families. You may know somebody that you think this could be a bit of an issue and you want to share that information. We actually find that most of the people that get information don't necessarily get it from our website. They get it up from somebody else who cares about them. So it's important that we share this information with everybody. So that website is great for sharing that information with people who just want to be more informed and want to take care of their loved ones as well.
Okay, great. Melissa, do you find there's anything that people misunderstand about gambling, or is there maybe some common misinformation out there that you want to clear up?
Yes, gambling is a game of chance. Okay, so if you are somebody who's really good with math, if you are somebody who maybe works in the financial sector, a lot of people talk about Bitcoin and being able to kind of look at patterns and it's the same with betting. And the reality is, there is no way that you will ever be able to control or predict an outcome. It is all randomized. And that's what people need to understand. So if you are playing online casino games or if you're in a casino, there's no decoding of patterns. There's no way to figure out, you know what, and in 10 more spins, this slot machine is going to give me my money. That's not going to how it works. And it's the same with sports betting as well. So as I said before, it does not matter how much information you get. You will watch news sportscasts and they will give you hints on the overs and unders, and they will tell you, or give you hints on how to bet. It doesn't matter. That information was relevant at the time that that information happened, but it is not going to help you guarantee bets going forward. So people have to remember that.
Okay, good to know. I've heard many stories of this. Sometimes people are like, these are my lucky numbers, or it's a lucky day, or a certain
Yeah.
athlete is
No,
wearing a number. It's very numbers based, I feel
exactly.
like. Yeah, so it's very
Exactly.
interesting. So then for people that are maybe watching this interview and are starting to recognize like maybe I have some of these signs. Maybe I haven't been exactly healthy. Are there any sort of programs or resources that they can go to help them become healthier as a gambler?
There are. So again, on our website, responsiblegambling.org, we do have a page that will help connect you to resources in your community. One resource that we talk about a lot is Connex Ontario. They're a great resource. They're able to connect with you via phone, email, text message, whatever works. And they're able to find you localized supports in the community where you live. There are also other treatment programs through mental health organizations across the province, like CAMH as well, that have specific programs for people who are experiencing gambling harms. I think more than anything else. And it's really important for a lot of the priority populations that I look to engage with. We know that there's stigma and shame when it comes to mental health, and that can create a barrier for people to access services. And so I can't, I can't reiterate enough that there isn't a type of person that experiences gambling harms. Anybody can experience these things. It's just a situation where perhaps the gambling play has maybe gone in a direction that was not anticipated. And there's, lots of different ways to get some support to bring things back online so that you're feeling okay and safe and secure. So definitely not something to be ashamed about at all.
Yeah, I think that's really important to note. What's the website they can access to be able to get these resources?
You can find us at www.responsiblegambling.org. We have lots of information about what gambling is, how to spot the signs, either in yourself or in a loved one. I spoke about the self-assessments. We also have lots of links to programs and services that people can access if they need support. We also have a lot of our information around planning before you play so that you can have tips and tricks to keep yourself safe as well. Some of the information on our website is translated, so you'll be able to find it in traditional or simplified Chinese. We also have content in Punjabi, Hindi, Urdu as well. So for people who are interested in finding out information, please check us out.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Melissa, for coming on the show and chatting with us. And everyone, please go to the website if you would like to find out more about the council or to find out more about these resources that Melissa chatted about. Once again, I'm your host, Amin Dillon, signing off. We'll see you in our next episode.